looking at the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission website, and the first thing you see is protecting people and environment. I feel so much better. Oh, and I thought there was something wrong, but they will do anything to protect me. The company of the United States. So here's somebody who did something wrong here. They imported radioactive material and distributed it without a license. So here's the report, or part of it. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has reached a settlement with Harman International. No, it doesn't say anything about the settlement, what it is, of Northridge, California, in which Harman agrees to implement multiple corrective actions. So they screwed up all kinds of things, and program enhancements, which means they were just buying and selling stuff, I guess, after it imported and distributed products containing radioactive material without proper license. Nothing in here about a fine, because the company of the United States doesn't really want to fine other companies. Looking at the Pacific Ocean near Japan, this is the currents. I think this is the Hokkaido current. Anyway, it comes over here and sort of dies out, but all this water makes it to the west coast eventually. And so that's moving all the radioactive stuff from Fukushima. 300 tons a day are being dumped into the ocean. All of it, a liter of it would kill you if you sat next to it. Kill everybody for hundreds of years if you sat next to it, but they're diluting it. Dilution to radioactive pollution. And the temperatures in the ocean. Let's look at some temperatures. Down here it's getting up to 90 degrees. 90 degrees. So there's 90 degrees in the ocean. So this area is becoming unlivable for a lot of fish, and everything's warming up. The Fukushima is dumping 300 tons a day in the ocean, and it's not just water, it's warm radiated water, and the radiation will continue pulsing for thousands of years, which means it warms up the water for thousands of years, which no one really mentions except Little Girl by Dana. So here's the fish. Pacific tuna, 70 degrees is all they can handle. Tuna, 80 degrees. Flounder, 64 degrees. A lot of these fish can't handle over 80. And the ocean is slowly warming up, and salmon are dying, blah, blah, blah. It's all going downhill. But this is some of the reasoning behind it, why everything's failing. Now here's the temperatures again, and then we have sea surface temperature anomalies. So these areas are warmer than they have been in the past. All this next is whether it's all pollution coming out from Chinese rivers and Japanese rivers, but some of it's probably all the radioactive material that's out there heating up. So the International Panel on Climate Change doesn't think of radiation very much when they consider things heating up. And all these nuclear plants, they pull in that 1,000,000 gallons of water a minute, and it all comes out hot. All these 450 plants, so they're all warming up the world. So as everything becomes more and more irradiated, after 7 years so far, think we'll make it 7 more? I don't know. But they'll keep raising the standards because everything gets more and more irradiated, and they don't want to spend any money to help people. They just want to make their cash. So this article says going to increase the safe limits of radiation. Well, there's no safe limit of radiation. That's just BS talk by the industry and all the people who want you to be dumb, because none of it's good for you. Any of it hurts your DNA, your body, your flesh. Here's all evil people in these pictures over here. This guy's horrible, this guy's horrible, this lady's especially horrible. She can barely talk. She's in charge. I want to do something. These people are horrible. They're just all the people in the headlines are just a bunch of Nazis, and everybody just follows them like they're dogs. So somewhere here it is. Number of deaths at Fukushima caused by radiation exposure was 0. Well, it's not 0. That's ridiculous. Here's another horrible person. Here's another one. Here's another picture of a same horrible person. So they're raising the standards so everything's fine. So no one gets worried. You say, okay, everything's fine. The government wouldn't hurt me. Oh no, the government loves me. And that's the same thing on this international panel on climate change. It's a big fantasy report. They're just cherry picking the good things, even though people think it's bad. Everything's exponential. It's much, much worse. And going to have famines in a few years. So here's Jimmy Dore talking about it for a few minutes, and he explains it a lot better than I did. So more on the I.P.C.C. climate change report.
Of ice sheets will pass a tipping point of collapse. 2 degrees Celsius, which is what the best case scenario right now. Flooding dozens of the world's major cities this century. At that amount of warming, it is estimated that global GDP per capita will be cut by 13%. 400 million more people will suffer from water scarcity, and even in the northern latitudes, heat waves will kill thousands each summer. That's at 2 degrees. And it will be worse at the equatorial band. In India, where many cities now numbering in the many millions would become unlivably hot. There would be 32 times as many extreme heat waves, each lasting 5 times as long and exposing in total 93 times more people. So those are like, my brain can't even take in it. What? The heat waves will last 5 times longer? I don't even, what? I mean, so that means like heat waves for years. That's at 2 degrees. Practically speaking, our absolute best case climate, but this is the best case. This is the best case scenario. That's if we immediately, so to avoid warming of the kind that the I.P.C.C. now calls catastrophic, which is 2 degrees, it requires a complete rebuilding of the entire energy infrastructure of the world. I'll read that again. So to get to that, stay in that catastrophe, we need to rebuild the entire energy infrastructure of the world. A thorough reworking of agricultural practices and diet to entirely eliminate carbon emissions from farming. And a battery of cultural changes to the way those of us in the wealthy West at least conduct our lives. And we need to do all that in 2 or possibly 3 decades. Just to let you know, they say we need to get rid of factory farming that produces carbon, meaning meat agriculture. Right now in the United States, you can't even videotape a crime being committed on a factory farm. That's a crime. So when documenting a crime is criminal, you're being ruled by criminals. So we are being ruled by criminals. Our whole culture is criminals. And the only people who are punished by the law are people who aren't rich enough to afford a good lawyer. So poor people. We have the world's biggest penal colony in the United States filled with who? Rich people or poor people? Poor people and minorities. I don't want to be too much of a naysayer, or I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but we are not going to rebuild the entire energy infrastructure of the world. We are not going to rework our agricultural practices. We are not going to change our diet entirely. That is not happening, because the way our culture, meaning the Western world, works, and now the Eastern world, is money. Is if it's profitable, it'll get done. If it's not profitable, it will not get done.
Well, that's the whole thing.
So they're talking about the warm part of the Pacific Ocean in this horrible chart, which has depths on both sides, but nothing in between, and says Pacific Ocean. So that's pretty inaccurate, but it does show warmer temperatures in a lot of the lower layers. And they call it the Blob. So this shows surface anomalies in the Pacific, sea surface temperature anomalies. So you can see a lot of here is off Japan, but that could just be from all the output of industrial products from Japan and China. And then here's some here, then it says it's here. But if it's the blob, you know what that means.
The Blob, starring Steve McQueen and a cast of exciting young people.